I'm not sure, maybe a few more familiar faces, a few new faces. I don't know, how many of you were not here last week? Almost half the class. Okay, so I guess for the people... Huh? I know, okay. So I won't sort of go through everything which you did because it might not be fair for the people who were here last week, but I'll quickly whiz through what we covered last week. So the topic was on bondage, and again we're looking at the chapter 4 of the Jain Path of Purification by Professor Padmanabh Jaini. So what we started was doing in a little bit of unconventional way, that we started by looking at some quotations, looking at what bondage is, what are the implications of bondage, and what I sort of mentioned last week is that when I was searching the internet, the English quotations I could only get from Srimad Rajan and Rakesh Bhai, that obviously this year we are kind of non-sectarian school here, and but to get quotations from other spiritual leaders is quite difficult, either it's in Hindi or Gujarati, so many of these quotations were based from the sort of, we get quotations from Rakesh Bhai. And we essentially looked at what bondage is, and I won't go into the discussed each quotation, but in essence what the gist of these quotations were, that bondage, what does bondage mean? Bondage means sort of binding of karma. And bondage also means, in the technical word in Sanskrit is bandh. Bandh, Gujarati ma ke bandh, darwajo bandh kero, close. But in context of spirituality, bondage essentially means the binding of karma to our soul. And how does binding occur? As you can see, many of these quotations says, and some of them are quite striking, that no matter what activities you do, you need to have a clear focus in your mind. So even if you're doing spiritual activities, and you could be doing spiritual activities, but if you do not have this focus in your mind, why am I doing this? Then that can become a cause of bondage. Classic example I can give is, especially our own experience, that almost straight after marriage, we decided to go to Palitana. And again, it was quite a contrasting, because although I grew up in Kenya, but I had been to Palitana many times, 10, 15, 20 times over the course of my time. And whereas Bharati, who had stayed all her life in India, because she was from the Stanakwasi sect, had never been to Palitana before. So, sort of newly married, I go to Palitana, I know very well the protocols, this is where you do the puja, this is where you do the flowers, and not knowing the Stanakwasi sect, that they do not believe in many of these rituals. So, for me it was quite surprising that, oh, you haven't been to Palitana, you do not know what's being done. But eventually, what is even more striking is that you are now in the queue waiting to do puja, and there's a long queue for people wanting to do puja. So you patiently wait because this is quite a very big pilgrimage. And for Bharti, in the ladies' queue, it was quite amazing what she experienced. The ladies are going to and then the and you can see the Bhagwan's Murti right in front of you. So it's quite a pious place. This is one of the holiest Jain pilgrim places around, and not only pushing, then they actually they'll start pinching you to come across. And then people actually shouting and screaming. Oh, and you actually then losing your temper, shouting and ulu, and you can see the other. So you can now see you are there to do a spiritual activity, but your mind is somewhere else. Bondage, so you can literally see if you get so stuck into this kind of routines, but if you do not have the goal or the focus in mind, then even spiritual activities can be a cause of bondage. So I think these are some of the interesting quotations here on bondage. It's also quite striking to see that when we talk of bondage, if you look at some life coaches, if you look at people like Deepak Chopra and many of the others, they actually even start using this concept of Jainism of how bondage is worked. If you look at Deepak Chopra, very quite a famous life coach, and he also sort of talks about how many situations seem to happen to people, but in reality they unfold from deeper karmic causes. So even they're kind of using the term of karma, the concept of karma, the buying action, reaction, and it's kind of amazing how that, and many of the other kind of philosophers have been thinking about the same thing, that there is action and there is cause of bondage. So rituals done without the aim of self-awareness can become the cause of bondage. So I think what's very important to emphasize here in Jainism, that the reason why sometimes we come to these classes here is to understand the basic fundamental, the basic principles. And the basic principle is the concept of soul. Okay? There is a soul, and I want to purify my soul. And then what people talk of, many faiths talk about heaven, then what is our Jain's concept of heaven? So that's basically the idea, that's the goal. No matter what spiritual activities we are doing, we are doing the aim of purifying our soul. Again, the last example here was saying that sometimes it seems to be kind of an irony that sometimes we feel I'm in a body. My soul is something which is we are all yearning to experience here. What is my pure soul? And then we are often told in spiritual scriptures that our body is prone to decay, prone to old age, prone to sort of sickness. And then you think, why am I bound in this kind of body? The body sometimes, in the spiritual sense, is not something to be adorned about. It's actually holding us back. And so therefore you sometimes feel, what is the use of this body here? But then the counter view is, let's say, looking at the example that you want to go to Hawaii. So you're looking forward to going to a very nice holiday, and many people are claustrophobic. So you think, I'm in a flight, and it's I'm bound in this thing. Isn't that big? I really don't like sitting on a plane. But then you got an ultimate goal. I want to go to Hawaii. I don't mind being in this flight for 8-9 hours with the view that I'll get ultimate sort of happiness or I'll get into my destination, which is I'm really looking forward to. So therefore, in a spiritual sense, the body is a means to purify ourselves. And so therefore, it cannot be looked after. Many people say, I'm fasting, and many of these things, self-mortification. The idea is not to punish the body. It's not to kill the body. The idea is to make it more endurable, to make it more resilient, with a view that I can progress in my spiritual body. So that's another view. I want to look after my body so that I can have a long life, and with a long life doing what? If I just want to have a long life, well then that's not a spiritual aim. Okay, oh yes, I really want to have a very long life, but yes, I want to have a long life, I want to have a decent lifestyle, but with a view that the longer life I had, if I have a very good health, I've got all my faculties intact, then I can practice spirituality much better. So that kind of sets the tone. Okay, what's your end game? What's your goal? So I'll just skip through this. So this is in essence where the chapter started. What I also mentioned was that when I was sort of preparing for this topic here, the topic is just bondage. And I literally thought that there were 4 classes dedicated to bondage, and I thought, what can you talk about bondage in for 4 lessons? And when I read through the entire chapter, it seems that what Professor Jaini has done has actually encapsulated the entire Jain philosophy in this one chapter. It seems like you could actually literally have almost a whole year discussing this. And what he has done is, in a way, kind of quite different. Okay, I want to explain bondage. To explain bondage, I need to understand karma. To understand karma, I need to understand the kind of the Jain philosophy of life. So in essence, what he's done in this entire chapter, they started with bondage and then gone into different facets of Jain philosophy, talking about Jain universe, different life forms, what karma is, what are the different types of bondages, and it's actually literally expanded. So it's a lot of pages and actually covered the entire Jain philosophy in almost one chapter. The basic point to start off here is that in Jainism, and if at all, if someone just attended one class and saying this, can you just very quickly make me understand Jain philosophy, then it is that we are in a constant cycle of life and death. There is this concept of soul. Okay, it's an entity which is within each one of us. It cannot be seen, and the properties of soul is exactly the opposite of the body. Body I can see, I can touch, I can feel, I can you can taste. Whatever the properties are of matter, soul is exactly the opposite antidote. You can almost call it black and white, totally different. So soul na je properties is very different from the properties of matter. The concept, and this is one very big leap of faith. Many people say the earth was created, God was there. Jainism believes that the soul has always been there, it is there, and it will always exist. And that is the same with matter. Even matter, even if you look at the principles of matter, conservation of matter in science, physics, they'll say matter exists, matter cannot be destroyed, it can only be transformed from one form to another. So that's even there in science. The same with spirituality, that our each individual unique soul, it cannot be burnt, it cannot be drowned, no one can pierce it with a sword, so nothing can touch the soul. The soul is independent, that's why it's all powerful. So that's the concept of soul. Another leap of faith or belief is that was our soul ever pure? What did I do to get into this cycle of birth and death? Why did I have this human body and get born into animals and plants and everything? So was I ever pure first and then did something? And the concept of almost like the Christian faith, that Adam and Eve did something and therefore then had to sort of atone for their sins. So Jainism says that all of us have never ever been pure. The existence of our soul has always come from an impure state. Because if something is very pure, if they're absolutely clean, then what is the reason for something like, for example, we believe that Bhagwan Mahavir is in heaven, Sikshila. He's without rag, he's without attachment, he's without dvesh, he doesn't have anything. What would make him cause to say, oh, because he's got, the souls there have got benevolent feelings for everyone, irrespective of Amar of Arsi. They've got absolutely no distinction between anyone. So that soul has got absolutely no reason to have biases or to engage in karma. So a pure soul will once when you become a pure state, there's nothing you can do to make it impure. And that's the whole point. It's a point of no return. So once when you're totally pure, that's you become totally pure. Even if you've got a slight trace of impurity, then you're not totally pure. Then you're still in samsara. You could be very, 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 and that's actually the concept of yin yang, the Chinese concept, that you see white and black, and no matter how white something is, in mundane, you'll still see a small dot of black. And no matter how black something is, you'll still have a little bit of whiteness in it. Which is the concept of that no matter how pure we are, even our spiritual leaders, there's still some traces of negativities within each one of us. Until we get to the ultimate state of total purity, we cannot say that this person is totally pure. All of us are. So we have got lots of good qualities, yet we have got slight negative qualities. And no matter how someone has got so many negative qualities, you can talk of the atrocious crimes that terrorists are doing, no matter what they're doing, but even the people, the most cruelest of people will have some degree of purity within them. They might have some good qualities within them. Then we talked about the four cycles. I'm not going into too much detail. We talked about the cycle of samsara, that the humans can be born into four different categories: heavenly beings, hellish beings, plants, and the human body. Then we talk of what Professor Jaini talks about, the different life forms: that Prithvikai, Apkai, Teukai, Vaukai, Vanaspatikai. So earth body beings, water body beings, fire beings, air beings, plants, and Traskai. Traskai is mobile beings. Then what Professor Jaini was saying, okay, so we've now understood that there are different kinds of life beings, that our soul can be born into different categories, the concept of reincarnation. And where does this reincarnation occur? Then he has to explain the Jain universe. That this is, according to Jainism, the Jain universe, it's called like a Purush lok. So they said that the Jain universe is in the shape of a human being standing with feet apart and with hands on the waist. So this is the whole concept of the Jain universe. You can discuss this in so much more detail. Concept of the bottom part, 7 hells, the top part is the heavens, and a very big clarification or distinction is when Jainism talk about heavens, this heavens is the concept of where angels are being born. So it's very different from saying God is in heaven. When we say God is in heaven, we mean like Sikshila. So that's a different concept, right? Total talk. So that's what we mean, that's what we're going to achieve to. So Sikshila is also called heaven, and the place where angels are born is also called heaven. So there's a little bit of confusion as to which heavens are you talking about. So when you say that, yes, after death, maybe in heaven, after what we believe is, we believe that you will be born into heaven. Even our Guru Maharaj is birth. So we always believe that heaven, eventually we can say that if someone going to Sikshila, then that's a point of no return. So that's the ultimate heaven, Sikshila. Then it talks about, and what's interesting is that the middle part of the universe is called Trasnadi. And Jainism believes that any living beings who can move, the concept of movement can only occur in the middle part of the universe. So even angels who can move from place to place, they can only be within that part of the universe. Anything else, only immobile living beings can be born on the edges of the universe. So it's this middle region here, Trasnadi, right from here. So even hellish beings, if a hellish being is going, if you've got a capability of movement, you can only have movement within this kind of cylinder over here. If you are over here, then you're literally mobile like a tree. Tree cannot move from place to place. So then you only have immobile living beings. And that's called look. And then about these dimensions here. No one really understands how these dimensions work. They call this concept of Raju or Raju. So it's 7 Rajus base, 14 Rajus tall, and it's almost like a 3-dimensional figure. But it goes into so much more detail. What are the different kinds of heavenly beings which stay in this kind of region here, different kinds of hellish beings. Okay, I think that's where we stopped last week. So we'll start off this. So now what Professor Jain is actually suggesting is explaining a little bit more detail what are the different kinds of living beings can be born. Atma je che, which are the different conditions. So he says you can have one-sense beings, and the one-sense beings are like plants. And they've got this, the sense of touch. So we've got 5 senses. Touch, taste, smell, eyes, and hearing. It's quite easy to remember. So it's like an inverted L. Touch, taste, smell, eyes, and hear. So it's like an L. So these are the 5 senses, maximum number of senses living beings can have. So plants have got a sense of touch. And they've also what is called Sanskrit pran. So they've got different kinds of pran. So we say that one sense beings have got 4 kinds of pran. The pran of sense, touch, the strength of body or energy, virya. So even like as you can see, and virya essentially means energy. And how does energy, say for example, pertain to plants? Okay, we know if there's sunlight here, then plants will bend towards that photosynthesis. Okay, they'll bend towards it. So that's the energy the plant has to sort of bend towards the sun. If you don't have energy, how can you do anything? You need energy. If you're down with fever, you don't have the energy to get up out of bed. So then plants have this energy to sort of, so that's a strength of body or energy. Respiration, we know that they respire, and life duration. So basically, one sense beings have got these 4 pran, as they call pran. Then you go to the 2 sense beings. Then over and above the sense of touch and all these others, they've got the sense of taste and the organ of speech. So taste and speech comes in there. So then they've got 6 prans, 4 of this and 2 of this. Then the 3 sense beings will have a sense of smell on top of all this. The 4 sense beings will have eyesight, and the 5 senses we've got a sense of hearing. So now we can see that this evolution of all life forms can only have this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 senses. Now what happens is within this 5 senses, you also got another category of 5 sense beings with mind and other beings without a mind. So we have also got 5 senses, but we are endowed with a mind, whereas other beings might not have such a developed mind as ours. So manche. So we have got 5 sense beings. So without mind, 5 sense beings with mind. So elephants, even humans are known to have this mind. Monkeys have got mind, but the others like snakes and other, so they have got 5 senses but without a sense of mind. And one sense beings are immobile, and all these are mobile beings. Now we come to discussing heavenly beings. Okay, what does James describe of angels? Like in Christian concept, Dev. After birth, it's through the woman's womb, and it's a 9-month gestation period. Whereas in Dev, what they say is the birth is spontaneous. So if you were to be born as an angel in Devlok, there is no question this many months. Your soul goes from here, goes to heaven, and it's instantaneous birth. You're just born into that birth of Devlok. Their bodies are Vikriyak bodies. Our bodies, it's obviously, these are like, we got a human body. Their bodies are called Vikriyak bodies, and they can alter their physical appearances at will. I want to become like a monkey, or I want to appear like a duck, or I want to appear like anything. They can change their form, in any way they wish like. So the body can, they don't have a body like ours, they can't speak or anything. And that's why like there are so many stories given in Jain scriptures that Bhagwan's murti so essentially, if they wanted to communicate with the humans, then they would do it through kind of mind reading. They won't be able to come and speak to you. They don't have the sense of speech. And now with Avdignan. So clairvoyance, memories of past births, and perceive objects at distances. Now, Avtignan is quite intriguing, and there's so many stories within the Jain scriptures which talks about devs and devis. For example, I'll give you a short story. How many of you have been to Sankeshwar or heard of Sankeshwar? So quite a few of you. So Sankeshwar is a very important tirth in Gujarat. Almost people when they go to Palitana or Girnar, Sankeshwar is holds almost an equal amount of importance there. The story goes, and now this story is obviously very ancient, and if you believe, you believe. If you don't, then it's like a Greek mythology. That is like you believe that someone is rich, because you can't prove such things. They are such historical ancient stories. It's come through word of mouth, and either you believe in it. But the story goes like this: that where did this murti come about? How did this murti come about? And they're saying not our current time cycle right now, our previous time cycle. The 24 Tirthankar, the previous time now, the 9th Tirthankar was actually on earth. So we are talking of a very long time period before. And in that time period, there was some person like one of us, and he goes to Tirthankar Bhagwan, and the 9th Tirthankar was called Damodar Swami. The 9th Tirthankar of the previous cycle. After 24th Tirthankar, 24th is Mahavir, first is Adeshwar, the 9th Tirthankar of the previous cycle was Damodar Swami. So someone goes to Damodar Swami and saying, hey Tirthankar, I'm so tired of this life and death. Can you please tell me when will I get rid of this Ulu, and when will I go to Sitshila? So Damodar Swami says, don't worry, don't despair. I know that not this time cycle, but in the next time cycle, the 23rd Tirthankar is going to be Parshvanath Bhagwan. And you will become his Ganadhar. Ganadhar means the first prime disciple. Bhagwan no Mahavir no disciple, Gautam Swami Yata. So the 23rd Tirthankar, Parshvanath Bhagwan, you become the Ganadhar, and you will then become, you'll then get Sitshila. Oh, he was ecstatic. Can you imagine someone telling you right now, okay, not now, but how many number of years later, you are definitely going to be coming to Sitshila. Oh, his joy, he was absolutely overjoyed. But then he went home, and then he thought about it. Oh my God, that's great. So I should now start praying to Parshvanath Bhagwan from now on. But this Tirthankar, he obviously knows how Parshvanath Bhagwan is going to look like. So he next day goes to the Damodar Swami. Can you please describe to me how is Parshvanath going to look like? Can you describe how is his structure going to be? So and since then he got the murti done. Okay, now this is going to be the idol I'm going to create. And from that day onwards, he started praying to that the Roj Parshvanath Bhagwan and puja kare and bhakti kare. When he died, he went into Devlok, and through Avtignan. So through this Avtignan, he now realized, how did I manage to come into this Devlok here? I mean, I've become an angel. What did I do to actually get into this state? And through that, he then realized, because there was this clairvoyance and memories of past births, he then realized, I was actually praying to this Sankeshwar Parshvanath Bhagwan Murti. And because of this, and I bound such meritorious karmas, I've actually been born into Devlok. And then again, what the story goes on to say, that through his own power, he actually then said, I want to take this Murti to Devlok. So Jains believe that this Murti which we have got here right now spent many, many years in actually Devlok. So when he was in Devlok, he took the Murti there. And then the story says, how did it come back to earth? It's a very long story, but in a nutshell what the story says, that at the time of Krishna, when Krishna Maharaj was here, he is actually the cousin of Nimnath Bhagwan, cousin Atai, Krishna. So they were actually waging a war. And Hindu and when they were fighting a war, all his army was actually sort of decimated. So all the soldiers were all sort of unconscious. So at that time, he was wondering, Kesukaru. So at that time, Nebinath Bhagwan was his cousin. He says, don't worry, why don't you fast for a few days, and then you will actually get some angel appearing in your dream, and then you ask, Murti je che, Parshvanath Bhagwan Devlok ma che. Why don't you ask the angel to bring that Murti back to earth? So he said, okay, fine. So he fasted for 3 days, and Padmavati Mata came up to him and saying, the Murti came on earth. He then sprinkled water, and Bhagwan Naman he sprinkled the Murti and then sprinkled all the soldiers, and then all the soldiers sort of got up. And in that joy, he took a shank, a shell, and then sort of said, and he blew it. Oh wow, now all the soldiers are up. And that's the reason why it's called Sankeshwar. Shank Ishwar. Shank Eshwar. Ish sort of Lord. So that how Sankeshwar is. So you can see there's so many stories of આપણા બીજી પણ આપણા બધા તીર્થંકરનો પણ કેટલી બધી સ્ટોરીઝ આવે છે કે they were on earth and they went into angels. So that's one think about the develop. Now, the other thing is, what is common to all life forms is soul. So now let's look at this little bit of the concept of soul. We know properties of matter. Now, matter hoy then it's properties state. What about soul? The general essence of soul, the characteristics of soul are perception, knowledge, energy, and bliss. So these are the basic properties of soul. Now let's look at how the difference between, so if you look at science talks of progression. There is this kind of, we evolved from the apes and the humans, and there's kind of this evolution. So science believes in progression. Okay, there's always going to be progression. Okay, so this life form, and then you become this, and sometimes it actually makes me wonder right now that right now, if you look at what's happening in today's day and age, we are not using any of our physical strength. Pehla farming karta tha, kheti mein kaam karta tha. Industrial workers were doing a lot of laborious work. If you look at it now that whole thing has just gone away. We are all using our brains. So essentially, all what brain is, so who knows? According to science, that if if mutations were to occur, genetic mutations were to occur, then we might become like this. Our brains will become much bigger than our bodies because we don't need our bodies. So that's going to be the evolution. And there was actually quite at the time of Darwin, there were actually some caricatures on him showing that this is Darwin, and sort of showing the ape or monkey with a huge face. But it actually struck to me that who knows, in time to come, that if science believes in progression, then we know our bodies will become smaller, the heads will become much bigger. Jainism does not believe in this level of progression. Jainism actually believes in retrogression. Jainism says, okay, I could be evolved as a human being, but if I've done wrong activities, I could actually go back in form. So I can now become a plant, I can become an animal, I can go into hellish, or I can even progress from humans to Devlok. So Jainism does not believe in a one-way progression. Jainism says that you can actually regress. It's not just progress. And that's actually sort of counterintuitive because if you look at Christianity, they're saying that God has made humans the master of the entire universe. God made the universe in, 7 days or this many days. God made the world, and at the end of all this creation, then humans came in and they are the masters of the universe. So we have got absolute supremacy over everything. We are supreme over the plants, we are supreme over the oceans, we can do what we like because we are the most supreme being living on earth right now. And there are many other people who actually, this other book by Homo Deus, I don't know, have you read Homo Deus? By Noel Harari. He also talks about this kind of evolution and he's also forecasting what's going to happen into the future. And he was also sometimes sort of given some credibility to what Jains believe in. So, and if you look at it from a science point of view, this is what it is. They believe that Earth is about 4.5 billion years old. So that's according to science. That the Earth is 4.5 billion years old. And at the very bottom, the life evolved from water. And that's the reason why when they're doing explorations on Mars and all these planets, they're looking for water. Water is the most basic life form, according to them, which and only after many millions of years, then you can have single cell life, and then life evolved right towards the tail end, according to science. So if this is 4.5 billion years old, life, as we know, is there. And you can imagine dinosaurs are here. So the time between dinosaurs and humans is quite small, according to the entire time period according to science. Jains have got a different view. They obviously believe that it's a total cycle. There is this aras. It's like a 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. Life there is happiness, and then it goes down towards a lot of pain and suffering, and then again the cycle goes on and on and on. And so sometimes, I think from my personal perspective, it's quite easy to reconcile between Jainism and science, because if Jains believe that things are going to go down, that's fine, there will be total destruction. And out of total destruction, again, life form will come along. So as they say that if there was this big bang and everything, that's fine. So there was a period of total destruction, and then life evolved. And then again, after life evolves, there might be total destruction. So if science says that after this many billions of years, sun will go away and there will be no life on Earth, that's pretty much what Jainism says, that yes, there will become a point whereby there will be almost very little life. Like Chatto Arao said, so much pain, so much suffering, rain falling, acid. The rain will not fall as it is right now, it will be acid rain coming down. And then so these are all the kind of things which are written in scriptures, which they have forecasted how pain and suffering will occur as time goes along, and it's quite easy to see that that concurs with what science says. Now, because the topic was on karma, on bondage, bondage is of karma. So the whole idea now is to understand what is karma according to Jain philosophy. The basic idea of karma is that we've been having infinite number of transmigrations. So that's a basic fundamental. Okay, we've been having, okay, one thing after birth thyo છે, આપણે કે મારો past birth, past birth. But all of us here and all life forms essentially has been going through infinite number of transmigrations in the past. So each one of us, we've been through some journeys. And if you look at pure even mathematics or even statistics, and if you even look at the applied mathematical principles of probability, the probability is that all of us, each one of us, has been through each of the life form. So we'll have been into heavens, we'll have been into animal kingdom, we'll have been into plant kingdom, we'll even have been to hells, and we'll also have been into human form. So each one of us has in the past, even because if we've been through infinite number of lives, and if you just even apply mathematical principles, then that means that we should have been through each one of these life forms. So that's kind of a sobering thought to know that all of us have been through this journey in the past. Yet we know that there's a journey yet to embark. So we believe that I want to get rid of this. So there's a journey sort of coming ahead, and that's the reason why we want to purify ourselves. The idea of karma is again rooted in the basic concept of why. No matter anything happens in life, and especially this concept of why comes when something wrong goes with us. Health kharab thai, if something passes away, why did it happen to me? Why did this happen to me? And this question of fundamental why is, if you then believe in karma, then you get into quite a few answers. Otherwise, it can lead to depression and all these many other things, because you just do not know why. And therefore, having this kind of a spiritual mindset sometimes is actually quite therapeutic and can actually make you overcome some of this lot of acute negativities. The concept of karma is also quite interesting. My uncle is in States, and he's a medical doctor, and he does not very strongly believe in this. And we sometimes have very interesting discussions. He reads a very interesting financial book, a book Fooled by Randomness. And they'll talk about the same thing. Why financial markets? Why did this person make $1 billion? Why did this guy lose something else? It's all randomness. So they will not like to use the word karma, they like to use the word randomness, but randomness is nothing but karma then in that case. If you really like to put in all this kind of stuff, it's random. But why random? I mean, it just cannot be pure random. And so therefore, and you can, if there's a book written by Taleb, and it's just pure talks about randomness in financial markets. Just all pure randomness. Something very interesting is long-term capital management. Who knows about LTCMM? In finance, anyone in finance? This is a very classic example of maybe early 90s. Can you imagine a finance company formed by Nobel laureates? So these are financial Nobel laureates. And I think, I don't know, there were 5 or 6 Nobel laureates get together and say, let's form a financial company. And we are the directors of this company, and we will do kind of hedge fund kind of things. These are Nobel laureates, so they are the best finance brains you can ever have. And if you have this, for them to raise capital, easy. They can literally say, okay, yeah, we've got now 20, 30, 40, $50 billion under management, and we'll now do some complex, funky stuff, and we'll manage your money. And it went on for quite some time, managed to get lots of good money, and then eventually what happened? That curve stuck in. 6 Sigma. Have any of you heard of 6 Sigma? The 6 Sigma is a great concept that no matter if you have a huge population of data, it tends to follow this bell curve. So the middle part is the median. So even up in heights, if you look at all the heights of the people here, you can say that these are the heights of this population here, and there will be some kind of middle range here. Most people will fall in this middle range here. And then you have some outliers. Some people sort of very short, and some people very, very tall. So you then have that. So those people are very few, but otherwise they'll be a medium. And then there's a concept of sigma, which is known as how much is the deviation, distribution, which is called sigma. To put it in layman's language, let's say, for example, there's a Motorola factory, and they say that we want to produce microchips. And if your factory is operating under 6 sigma, that means that you're only having 3.4 defects per million. So if a million chips are passing through your production line, if your company is operating under 6 sigma, which means you can only have 3.4 defects. So it's such an efficient line, that a million microchips, only 3 defects. That means I'm operating at 6 sigma. I'm very efficient. If you are not operating at 6 sigma, then you've got much more defects. Now, when these people started LTCM, long-term capital management, they were doing all the fundamental stuff here. But then what happened was 6 sigma struck in. If something goes wrong, everything goes wrong. They did not foresee that. You have all these complicated risk management systems that if interest rates go down, this will happen here. If the stock markets happen to this will happen here. But what if everything happens together? Interest rates go down, stock market goes down, oil happens to this. So if everything were to go down, what will happen? So for example, how many of you can believe that Kale Savarma, in the morning there will be snow, but Bopana there will be 30 degrees Torko, by the evening there will be hurricane, and by the evening there will be a cool breeze. In one day, can any of you believe all these events will happen? Kale Savarma, right, first thing in the morning, absolute snow. By 12 o'clock, 30 degrees sunshine, and then Sanna, torrential rain. If all those events were to happen together, then what's going to happen? And this is what happened in this capital management. They actually went bust because they could not foresee all these various factors happening all together. You can imagine anything to you. Interest rates went up, I can manage something else. But fine, I can hedge one part of the risk. But if all the things, all the factors, all were to go down, even the models could not do that, and the whole thing went down. And what is this? Randomness, but you can see how karma is another thing goes on. That even the best of brains cannot deal with such kind of sort of randomness. Struck by lightning, the curious world of probabilities. The point I'm trying to make here is that karma has got sort of analogies to people talk of randomness, talks of probability, and that's what's happened here. We do not know why certain things happen to us, to others, to the society, and you can have different words to describe that, but when you then start going more towards a spiritual inclination, then you talk of the karma, the concept of karma, the reasons of why things are happening, why things are not happening, and so that's quite interesting to know about karma. Again, just some basic anecdotes. Fact of life, reason for accepting karma. One gets down from plane and gives his seat to another, plane crashes. Road accident, one saved, other dies. Intelligent rotting in poverty, dull-minded wallowing in riches. Innocent hanged to the gallows, real culprit escapes. Multi-millionaires stirs poker overnight and vice versa. Such strange happenings can only be explained by laws of karma. Man of religion bears adversity with cheer and recoils from sin, whereas man without religion holds others to blame for his misfortunes and commits many evil deeds to end his misery. And I think we are actually staying in a society right now, and we even mentioned it last week, that we are in that kind of pointing blame cultures on others. Okay, even what seems to be like kind of, suppose if I'm just sitting here, and if I were to just walk across Chirag and give him a slap on his face, he'll say, I'm not provoked Rajeev in any way, and out of the blue, he's just giving me a slap here. What for? I've not done anything, but eventually you must have given me a slap. That's why you're getting the slap back. So karma, sometimes that's what I mean. So karma, sometimes when you're sitting here, you just might feel, I'm not doing anything. I'm not at fault. I've not done anything to provoke anything. Certain things have happened in my life. How can I explain that? It's his fault. 100% it's his fault. But yeah, it's okay. That person has done something, but you must have done something. Otherwise, there's just no way. And sometimes, and this concept can become very, very strong. We know of, at least I've heard of stories. Certain monks and nuns, they saying, "Joe, I have got love for everyone." Universe. And if you look at Acharya Chandaji, she's like that. No matter of caste, creed, rich, poor, they've got the love, almost like a universal love. And if you take a step further, many of these monks and nuns,